Good evening. We're welcome to this program tonight. Barb Duke, Peg McGinn, and I, Lucy Hess, are here representing the Fort Wayne chapter of the League of Women Voters. We are working with the chapters across the state and with Common Cause of Indiana to encourage reform of the current state legislative voting districts. Tonight we're going to discuss the mandate that comes to states each time there is a new census, which will be in 2020. Since the population sizes will vary after a census and the communities will be arranged differently after the census, it's important to make sure that the voting districts have equal number of population and include the cross-section of people in their areas. In 2015, the Indiana General Assembly passed a bill creating an interim special committee on redistricting to study the need for and to recommend a process for the next reform of our voting districts. The interim committee includes legislators and citizens who will make this recommendation about the need to reform the voting districts to the General Assembly in this December 2016. And this sounds like a big task, so Peg, what in the world is redistricting anyway?
Thanks, Lucy. Well, redistricting is the process by which government bodies redraw boundaries of electoral districts. Now, this process affects districts in all levels of government, and that includes local government, such things as the school boards, city councils, county councils, any municipal districts. And then from local, we go to our state legislative districts, and finally our congressional districts from which we elect the members of our U.S. House of Representatives. Today we're going to focus on the Indiana legislative redistricting. And as you said, this is conducted every 10 years following completion of the U.S. Census. Now there are two federal requirements which must be met when redistricting. They are equal population, one person, one vote, and adherence to the Voting Rights Act, which basically prohibits discrimination against racial, ethnic, or language minorities. However, individual states can and often do adapt their own additional statutory limitations. However, in Indiana, the only limitation established is contiguity, and that means that all areas in the district are physically connected to each other. However, other states have additional limitations, some to encourage statewide partisan balance, some to help preserve communities of interest, some keeping the districts compact, which basically just means that they're not too elongated, spread out, or very jagged. So the states do have options, but as I said, in Indiana, we only have the limitation of contiguity added to the federal requirements. So let's talk now about how the states determine these lines. Well, there are a variety of ways, but most states put the state legislature in charge of the entire process. California and Arizona have fully independent commissions. Some states use bipartisan commission to draw the lines. One in Iowa is using a nonpartisan government agency. And a few states, which includes Indiana, use a combination system. That said, usually Indiana's district boundaries are also drawn up solely by the legislature, and we do that through our elections committees of the Senate and House. We really only have a backup redistricting committee that only comes into play if the state legislature is unable to complete federal congressional redistricting within the first session following the census. If that's the case, then a 5-member redistricting commission meets 30 days after the session, and then they draw up the map. The composition of this commission is made up of the Speaker of the House, President Pro Tem of the Senate, the chairs of the Senate and House Committee on Elections, and a gubernatorial appointment. That map then goes to the governor for implementation as an executive order. Thus, you can see our Indiana redistricting process really has no independence from legislators. That means that partisan balance, as well as the minority participation, is solely dependent on the makeup of the legislatures and governor, which are currently under unified majority party control. Our Indiana process also has no specific provisions for public input, nor is there any requirement to create competitive districts. In fact, the current criteria doesn't even prohibit those drawing the lines from considering the residences of the incumbents. But although our current districts are skewed to favor Republicans, this truly is a bipartisan problem. Because the way our redistricting process is set up, whichever party is in control gets to draw the maps. Common sense would seem to dictate that those affected by the process should certainly not be the ones to develop the rules and should not be the ones to oversee it. Let me give you one measure of unfairly drawn districts, and that is the number of contested primaries. Now, this is where one political party has significant majorities in a district, and then the contested primaries literally wind up substituting for the general elections. In the 2014 primary elections for Indiana legislators, there were 13 contested Republican elections and only one contested Democratic election. This unfair redistricting has a name, and that is gerrymandering. I'm going to turn the discussion over to Barb, and she'll tell you more about that. Barb?
Thanks, Peg. Gerrymandering is a very interesting word. It is defined as the manipulation of boundaries of an electoral constituency to favor one party or class of people. This word struck a tone in my mind when I was taking government, the mandatory government class, my junior year in high school, which incidentally was over 50 years ago. I remember my teacher writing gerrymandering across the board and underlined it. I thought, and he defined it. I remember thinking, that's not fair. I thought we lived in a democracy. Well, ironically, we live in the only democracy in the world where the politicians select their voters rather than the voters selecting their representatives. Gerrymandering has been practiced since the founding of our country, but the term did not evolve until Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts signed a redistricting bill into law in 1812. An opposing Massachusetts newspaper coined the term gerrymandering because one of the districts resembled a salamander. The Boston Gazette looked at it, and thus the term began. The state of Indiana has been continuing to be an active participant in gerrymandering.
So why are we considering this redistricting reform in Indiana is a good question. And who's going to be working on it? The General Assembly had appointed this special committee on redistricting, and the folks from the League of Women Voters and Common Cause are trying to work to persuade this interim special committee to form a process that will be fair and much more representative to our Hoosier fellows. It is indeed a need to make these voting districts representative that compels us to also provide this information to you and to encourage you to also perhaps encounter the interim committee and ask them to help consider what we need for reform. One of the big things that Peg pointed up and Barb also was that we really want this commission to be away from the legislators. It doesn't matter which party's in power. Every legislators are going to want to have their influence. And so it is really important that we have a commission that is citizen-led to be able to direct this process to at least have some chance of having equity. There'd be less opportunity then to create narrow districts favoring one party or the other, and it'd also be less chance of gerrymandering that Barb had talked about. Some of the main reasons that this is critical for each of us as citizens in our state is that when voting districts are more representative, there's going to be fewer unopposed candidates. This year, in our election, 25% of our state representatives are unopposed, and 5 senators are. Well, this really reduces the discussion, and it also can cause people to not hear the issues clearly and understand the full details. It also means that when the districts are more balanced, there's probably going to be higher voter turnout. Indiana has one of the worst records for low voter turnout in the country, which is really disturbing to all of us because we want to have our voices heard and we want to be part of the process. If you have people that you can vote for, and you don't just have unopposed people, you have some choices, and you can begin to discuss things with your neighbors and with the candidates and come to some conclusions of who best represents you. When there's more moderation and balance, issues are discussed, and really very important is the idea of compromise. We need to work together to find the best way to set up our policies and make our laws. So the result of that, too, is more work will get done. Bills will be passed, legislation will be discussed that will meet the needs of the citizens, and we will not have this problem of nothing ever getting done in the legislature. And we all get very frustrated with that when we think, why aren't they taking care of this situation? And it's because we can't have compromise. With better balance, all voters then have a voice, and they really have a voice in the decisions and the policy determination. And it's important for each of us to be able to have our voice heard, but most important that we take the time and to discuss with the folks running for office and our elected officials what some of these issues are and what they mean for us individually and for our particular community. Well, this redistricting process seems like a big job to me, and I'm wondering, Barb, are there any models that we can follow that might make this task a little bit easier?
Well, there are a few. The Brennan Center, Resource Center out of NYU in New York City, has researched redistricting and has created a citizen's guide. California has used this, I believe Arizona has, and they have created completely independent commissions which do not include legislators or other elected officials. Alaska, Montana, Idaho, and Washington State do have commissions of such, but they are not as populated as California. So California is one of the most successful models that we can use. However, every state is totally different. So Indiana cannot copy California, California can't copy another state, and so forth. So we have to be open-minded and allow our legislators to form an independent commission based on the facts that we have in Indiana.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned California. My brother lives in California, and I had mentioned that I was going to a League of Women Voters meeting where we were, and also with Common Cause, where they were telling us a little bit about gerrymandering. And he volunteered on his own to say, that California had gone through the process of redistricting at the last census, and that from his view, that it has been really quite successful. He said he had told me that they have many more unopposed, or many fewer unopposed elections, both from the state down even to local, that the voter turnout has been much better. And important to him was the fact that he perceived, at least, that there was a better consensus and policy building because people were aiming toward more moderation and not so much on the fringes or the far right or the far left or however far you want to be. And for him, that really made a difference. And I think, when I asked him a little bit more about it, he said, well, yes, indeed. He said, our state legislature is really getting some things done. He may not always agree with everything, but at least there's the opportunity, and it seems to have worked pretty well. He also said that the system in California was very complex. It's a very big state, and they did go through quite a process to work very hard to make it as representative and as fair as possible, so that, again, the result being that you're going to have a much better turnout at the voting booth, and you're going to have better policy. So, Peg, I don't know, we're talking a little bit about the models, and you probably have some views here that you want to share.
Well, I'd like to talk about my opinions and also what the League of Women Voters and other groups, you've mentioned Common Cause, but there are many groups involved in this effort. What are we really looking for here? And that's what I'd like to talk about for just a minute or two. You've already mentioned, and I think all of us have mentioned, that we do support a citizen-led redistricting commission. Now, this means that it is an independent, nonpartisan commission, which would determine then the Indiana voting districts. We oppose partisan gerrymandering. We feel that no individual or party should benefit from the redistricting commission or the process of redistricting, and that this redistricting process definitely has to be completely open and transparent to the public, so that anybody wanting to find out what's happening at this time, or what's being done, has complete access to that information. And also, we feel very strongly that citizens should have the opportunities to provide input into the map drawing throughout the entire redistricting process. We want citizen-led redistricting. And the process of fair redistricting is one of the foundations on which our democracy was built. It has to be constructed to allow each and every citizen to have an equal voice, because it's only then that that concept of one person, one vote will really be truly meaningful. So I hope that our listeners will consider taking action. One of the ways they can do that is to contact Representative Jerry Torr. He is the chair of the Interim Committee on Redistricting, and he can be reached at, get your pencils and your pens, because you're going to want to write this down. His name again is Representative Jerry Torr.
And that's spelled, his last name is Torr.
Thank you. And as I said, he is the chair of the committee that we're discussing today. And he can be reached at h39@iga.in.gov, G-O-V. So again, that's at H, as in high, 39 at IGA, which is the Indiana General Assembly, .in for Indiana, .gov for government. And I don't know, Lucy, would you like to talk about how people can get information, further information, if they either didn't write it down today or they want to seek additional information?
Well, we're planning to have, this is going to be live streamed, so one of the ways you can hear it again, it's going to be rebroadcasted. If you're listening on September 14, it's going to be replayed again on September 28. We hope to have this also placed on the League of Women's website so that you can access it there. And you also can contact the reader's services here in the library if you needed to have more information about how to connect with Representative Torr. And again, the radio station here will also be able to give you some help. It's WELT 95.7 FM. But again, you'll really want to probably send your information to, now I guess like Peg said, get your pencils, keep them handy, World Wide Web dot, and then for Allen County Public Library, it's ACPL dot info, and then slash WELT. And when you get to that site, you go to Listen Now, and you can hear it again. Again, it's World Wide Web at acpl.info/WELT. I think I may have missed something. Is there another place that we think they might be able to get information other than locally? You certainly can type in Common Cause. They have a wonderful resource on Common Cause of redistricting and information about what's important for citizens to consider. League of Women Voters website also has several links and areas, and they have many other things that you might find very interesting if you go to those websites. And Peg, you have some more.
Just one more thing that I'd like to add is that if you go to the iga.in.gov, And again, that's the Indiana General Assembly and then Indiana Gov. So iga.in.gov. You can actually get a lot of information about your districts, about your legislators. You can look under interim committees and you can find out exactly what our special interim study committee is doing. If you'll see where there's a link to their agenda. You can follow in the archives the work that has been done in their past meetings. And if you're particularly interested, the committee will be meeting again on September 19th at 1 o'clock, and they will be live streaming that. And so if you're really excited about this and you'd like to get involved and you'd like to hear more about what they're actually doing, this is a nice way to find that out. But that's a wonderful website that has just a wealth of information about our government and government functions. And I think that wraps it up for today.
It does. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will take some interest in connecting with Representative Tour, because this is an extremely important thing that needs some time to have it happen. Our census is going to be in 2020, and the redistricting then will be done in 2021. That seems like a long ways away, but in order to do this task that's going to be representative and fair and thoughtful about how we can arrange our districts to really get voters involved, is going to take a little time. So we hope that you will connect with him and let him know how you feel about this. Also, the General Assembly needs to get this recommendation, because then they are the ones who are finally going to form this commission. And again, if we can't stress it more than we already have, we want you to be sure to tell them we want it citizen-led. We want the citizens to be involved in this redistricting process, because we know, and from other states' successes, that it will be a fair process and we will have a better voter participation. So thanks again for listening, and we hope to talk to you again sometime.
Thank you.